Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of our podcast, Region Knowledge and Policy. So this week we continue our prior week's discussion, and here today we're going to discuss the BioMeter. The BioMeter is an initiative funded by the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA, to evaluate the campaign promises of President Bio that were made in 2018. All in all, President Bio made a staggering 536 promises in the Sierra Leone People's Party's New Direction Manifesto. So IGR has tracked and evaluated all 536 promises to ask, did we, Sierra Leone, get what we voted for? Well, today I have a guest with me here, and he's going to give us a breakdown on the BM to give us context and analysis on not only the 2018 promises, but also what this means for President Bio's 2023 campaign and chance for re-election. Hello and welcome to the program today. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Charlie Hughes. I am a governance and development consultant.
Okay, so welcome, Charlie. So as we start, can you briefly tell us about the BM process? What has the BioMeter process been like, and the reason for tracking these promises?
Well, the BioMeter is a new initiative by not only IGR, but by civil society in democracies with similar context as Sierra Leone. So, for instance, in Liberia, they have the BioMeter that looks at the extent to which President Weah delivered on his manifesto promises, and then in Senegal they had the Macky Sall meter. So, across these countries, it's a new experiment at promoting social accountability.
Okay, so how did your team identify all 536 campaign promises?
Well, as you know, it's not that difficult. Political parties' campaign promises are usually contained in a single source document called a manifesto. So all we had to do was to get a copy of the ruling government's manifesto, and then track all the promises they made. So if you look at the report that is coming out, for every single promise that we captured, we indicated the reference page for that particular promise. So we are not like putting words in their mouth. You said we are going to do this. We capture it without changing anything, and then we give you the reference page. There are other platforms where the president and the vice president and other senior officials made other promises, such as his inauguration speech, such as his speech to Parliament, his first address to Parliament. But those were largely left out because the single biggest source document would be the manifesto. So that is what we use. So if we say 530 something, we have all the reference pages for each of those manifesto promises.
So going forward, can you take us briefly through the tracking process and evaluating process?
Well, so when we say evaluation, it can be a nuanced term to use, because we are not evaluating the manifesto promises on the basis of what good came out of it. No. Multi-party democracy is premised on the idea that different political parties will offer different ways of doing things. So we are not going to say you are wrong or you are right. You offer your own ways of solving a national problem. Party B offers their own way of solving a national problem. And then the citizen can look at both ideas and then decide whose ideas they want to go with.
Okay.
But if it happens that your idea got the vote, it is our place to ensure that we are able at the end of the day to let you account to the people.
Okay.
So if I voted for you because you said this, at the end of the day, we want to be able to report back to the people to say, well, for those of you who voted for this party on the basis of this promise, indeed they delivered on the promise. So when we say evaluation, it's not about what good came out of it. I mean, let me give you an example. When in the U.S., when Trump was campaigning, he told the American people that on day one, he would come out of the Paris Climate Change Accord. You will argue that so many, in this age of climate change, there will be so many people appalled by that statement. But indeed, there were also so many Americans who clapped for him on the basis of that statement. On the day the man took over, he signed executive orders taking the U.S. out of Paris Accord. It is not my place to say he was wrong or he was right. He made a promise to electorates, and he delivered on the promise. So that is how we have looked at that is our approach to the BioMeter. If you say, I'm going to offer free tuition to children of the armed forces, personnel, or I'm going to make science education free for women, it is not our place to argue over the utility of that approach. Did you do it? It's as simple as that. So we've been able to gather evidence for every manifesto. We'll gather evidence regarding the extent to which it was completed, if it was fully completed, if up to the time of the report, if the completion had not been achieved, we will give them that kind of rating that reflects that. Okay. If action had not been started on the promise, we will say action had not been started. It's a learning process for all of us, so we were able to capture this lesson that, in fact, some of the manifesto promises were very vague, and there's no way you can measure them. If somebody says we will promote the moral authority of the state, how are you going to measure that? But by even capturing those vague manifesto promises, we are contributing to making manifestos useful, because other political parties can learn from that in the way they frame their manifesto promises. You just don't talk to your fellow citizens in ways that don't make sense. I will live up to high moral standards. I will stop the reckless use of executive discretion. That kind of stuff. You don't talk to your fellow citizens that way. But like I said, it's a learning process for all of us. Now, because IGR has been able to highlight these things, other parties, even the ruling party, the opposition party, or they are now in the process of framing their own manifestos. They can learn from that and then say, okay, what can we say that is measurable? What can we say that is doable? I mean, take even the number of manifesto promises. How can you make 500 promises? Yeah. That's super huge. But like I said, we are all in the learning game.
Okay, so I can only imagine how challenging this task has been. So tell us about the national promises. How were they categorized?
They were categorized, along the normal sectors where government works, the traditional sectors.
And maybe you can detail on
meaning all government services are delivered within a given number of sectors that we are all familiar with: agriculture, economy, governance, local government, tourism, health, education, foreign affairs, and all of the sectors have assigned ministries, as a framework for delivering government services. So we organize them alphabetically, starting with agriculture, way down to women, youths, and persons with disability. Not in any order of importance, but just for easy structuring. So you start with agriculture, and then you go downwards, and then because this is how the manifesto promises in the party manifesto of the SLPP. This was how they were also framed along those sectors. I mean, and it's the same for other political parties, NGC, APC. That's how, so you're able to see how things are faring within the sector in terms of what government is doing, not in terms of what is coming out, but in terms of what they said they will do. So we have all of those sectors, and then if you see the results of the promises, and then you can relate them to the results of the implementation of the promises, and then you can actually relate them to what is happening in the real world. I mean, I give you an example. Local government was really the least area of performance, and then you look around, you can really see that the councils are just basically just kind of like dead. The councils, I mean, since the end of a huge donor support to local government, nothing has happened that is really significant. And we made the point there that for even some of the promises that were made regarding local government, they were just kind of trivia, dealing with the role of paramount chiefs, criteria for getting elected as a councillor, and those kinds of mundane things. So you as an ordinary person, you can actually reflect on our findings regarding local councils, and then you look at the real world in Sierra Leone and say, well, probably this is it. That's why these guys are really, they've not fared well, over the last 5 years.
Okay, so let's dive in a little. Let's talk about the broad highlights of the BioMeter, and like what's the most promising aspect of it, and well, as you started stating earlier about the local councils, what's the most worrisome?
Well, yeah, like I said, you reflect on the evidence of performance, and then also step back and say, okay, let me see how this sector is faring in reality. So you take education, for instance, and you can actually see changes, as a result of the implementation of those promises. That these are changes that you can actually relate with in terms of what's happening on the ground, and even with the health sector, or even with agriculture. So there have been 2 or 3 kinds of inputs that the government has been making towards those promises. One, there are legislative and policy inputs. So across all sectors, there are a number of promises dealing with policy reviews and new legislations. In fact, as I speak to you, yesterday I went to the government bookshop and I bought like 10 new legislations that have been passed over the past 3 months. So passing legislations and improving policy has been a key thrust of those promises, and they run across all areas. Again, maybe that is a good place to start, because if you don't have the policy framework, then how do you provide guidance to those who are implementing things? And then another thrust that I could highlight was the need to revive moribund institutions. So they will say, we want to revive these veterinary stations, we want to revive the joint monitoring committee, we want to revive this, we want to revive this. And those things, they tell their own story, regarding governance in the country in general. So why are we reviving all of these things? Why are we laying all of these new policies and laws? Was it that they were largely absent? And then the third thrust of those manifesto promises was investment in capacity building. How do we build the capacity of existing institutions and processes, or make new investments, whether it's about buying massive quantities of tractors or buying large fleets of combined harvesters. But so, in a summary, those are the 3 main thrusts of these promises: legislative policy interventions, capacity building interventions through massive investment, and then 5 in moribund institutions. So that explains when you see rehabilitation of all government hospitals, rehabilitation of research stations in the case of agriculture, rehabilitation of re-evaluation of our embassies and their rehabilitation in the case of foreign affairs. So all of the 3 trusts, they run across every sector. So that is how that is our key takeaway from assessment of the promises.
Okay, so talking about policies, we know when we talk about policies, most citizens often don't understand or don't really care much about the process. So what do you think would be the effect or the effect is going to be on the BioMeter, not only on citizens but also the voting electorate, as President Bio and Dr. Samura Kamara of the APC campaign for the upcoming elections?
Well, people have different ways of looking at the utility of this BioMeter exercise. For us, as civil society, as a think tank, we are largely or mainly interested in the idea of holding political parties to account for their promises. So, we've played our own part. We've been able to tell the population that this is what the guys promised, this is what they have done. So, for the population, it's up to them to digest the information and decide, because it has some integrity implications. If somebody makes a promise to you 3-4 times and he doesn't deliver on that promise, that person has integrity challenges. So it's up to the citizens to digest information and decide what they want to do with it. For opposition parties, it's equally up to them to read the document comprehensively, see what learning they can take from it in terms of framing their own manifesto promises, see what learning they can take from it in terms of picking holes in what the government said. So we have played our own part. Of course, it's about we're trying to make manifestos or put manifestos at the center of electoral politics in Sierra Leone. We can't have elections or multi-party politics where manifestos are meaningless. So once we begin to put pressure on them that manifestos are useful. So if you produce a manifesto and make promises and somebody else doesn't produce any manifesto, well, it's up to their political party to go and seek other ways of mobilizing people. But we know that voters are supposed to be mobilized on the basis of manifesto promises. So our interest is to make manifesto relevant in the politics of this country. So if the opposition, they can look at the BioMeter and see how they can capitalize on it for electoral gains. Government, they can look at it to see how they can capitalize on it for electoral gains. The citizens, they should look at it to determine their political behavior, their ballot decisions. Because in the absence of the utility of manifestos, what the citizens are left to this country is just regionalism, ethnicity, personal relationship with politicians. So if we put the manifesto issue at the forefront and you choose to ignore it, we can't do otherwise. We have played our own part, which is to make manifestos relevant in political debate. So people can have different ways to relate to this document. Opposition party, government, even civil society organizations. I'll give you an example. If you are a civil society, you belong to a civil society organization that has an interest in promoting the interests of persons with disability, what you will do is to go to that manifesto document, go to the promises relating to persons with disability and see, in the first place, are they really sufficient regarding the issues that affect us? 2, did they in fact address what they said they are going to address? If they didn't, it becomes a basis for your own advocacy. So there is no one-size-fits-all in terms of how we relate to this document.
Yeah, and also it feels like there is an aspect for everyone to connect with.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that light, is this campaign, this tracking of campaign promises, is it going to be sustainable?
Oh yes, it is going to be sustainable, and like I said, it's something that is experimental. So for all of us who are involved in the process, we are all learning. So we can even build new projects, outside of elections time frame. For instance, how can we support political parties to write manifestos that are with indicators that we can track easily? How can we help them to write manifestos that are not overbearing? So it is something that is sustainable, and it is something that needs to be sustained. Otherwise, if you do not have political party promises at the heart of multi-party politics, then you just leave us to fight or use other issues to determine how we vote. And that's not how it should be. The idea of multi-party politics is that parties are organized on different platforms, and nobody's wrong and nobody's right. So if you are a religious fundamentalist, if you organize within boundaries of law, go ahead and organize. If you are there for the environment, you are a Green Party, go ahead and organize yourself and sell your ideas. So we are using the term manifesto because this is how it is a single source document where you can actually easily track what this party stands for. So that's why we're using manifestos. But it's all about making promises to citizens as a social contract. Elect me because this is how I will handle this challenge. Elect me because this is what I want to do. So whether, in fact, there is an opportunity for us to go beyond manifesto documents. So if you make a promise anywhere as a leader of a party, we should be able to track it and record it. On this day, you said in bold at this crowd, on this occasion, that if elected, you will do this and this and this. So even if it is not contained in a single source document like a manifesto, the fact that you said it, to voters, it is a campaign promise. So that can also be captured. But for the ease of it, it's easier to deal with promises made in one document.
So one would be tempted to say, oh, okay, you're capturing these campaign promises. How possible is it that you can hold them accountable to see that these promises are, effective or actualized?
No, it is not our place to push them to actualize them, because in the first place, there could be promises in there that I don't even like. So it is not my place to push you to do it. It is my place to hold you to account for those who believed in you and voted for you. You said if they elect you, you will do this. And the majority of citizens voted for you on the basis of those promises. So my job is to go back to them and say, okay, this is it. But if you have a campaign promise and that most of us at IGR do not like, why should we push you? And in any case, there are so many CSOs in this country that have sectoral interests. So if you, like I said, you are in a gender or women equality advocacy, or you are into health issues, if we have helped you to unravel what government promised and what government did, why can't you as a CSO ensure that they live up to their promises or improve the quality of their promises? Yeah. So it is not IGR's place to force parties to implement their policies. No. If we have sectoral interest for certain areas, I know, like for instance, you've been working on health and education, maybe we can say, you know what, the quality of the promises we are not up there, or maybe you didn't do well, or maybe remaining issues may need to be addressed. Yes, but the focus of the BioMeter is just to tell Sierra Leoneans that, hey, so this is it. This party made all these promises, and this is what the actions they took on the promises. You go ahead and decide whether you want them to change some of these promises, whether the outcomes of those promises we are not that useful. It's up to you.
Okay, so in other words, you set the platform for others to climb on top.
Yes. Opposition parties, CSOs, intellectuals, researchers. Our interest is just to present the fact, and we are going to continue this work regardless of, as long as you are a political party, you'll be held to account for your manifesto promises if you are elected into office, or when you are elected into office.
All right, so thank you very much, Mr. Charlie, for giving us your time and sitting down with us to have this interesting conversation. So this is how we end today's episode, and till next time, I have been Lucy Imanetalu.